he said, if being anti-woke means sleeping through the suffering of others, call me woke. Hey, welcome back. Well, we continue our exploration of the continuing culture of guilt and shame through religious structure. So, what do we do then? There's mechanisms of guilt and shame. So, from an early age, people in religious communities are taught to internalize their religious rules and expectations. Okay, the fear of violating these norms persisted into adulthood. And the consequences are often portrayed as spiritually dire. You're going to be possessed by Satan and threatening eternal damnation or separation from the divine. Okay? Punishment, fear, punishment, fear. Is that the way you train dogs, Mike?
Yeah, it's pretty much in a certain way for a certain result, isn't it?
Yes. So what people were being trained to is to follow. There's a reason why the mask wasn't said in English until 1972. Okay, because only the privileged were allowed to learn Latin, or even to read. The literacy rate was very, very small. Okay, so people went to church. Actually, by going to church on Sundays, if you didn't go, it was a mortal sin, which meant that they had a guaranteed flock who would guaranteed to also contribute financially to the thing. And this Fish on Friday thing, of course, just fed into that also. We're going to get in real trouble for this, but that's just the way it is. So when we talk about the consequences of sin, when they talk about the consequences of sin in religion, what do they say they are?
Eternal damnation.
Yes. The wages of sin are death. Have you ever heard that one, Mike?
Yes.
Okay. So there's normal human experiences, okay, such as sexuality, doubt, questioning authority, and those are forbidden. You can't question authority. You can't be sexualized. I remember every week there was a Catholic Digest. All right, a Catholic Digest, and in there I always took a great delight in reading it because they had a list of ratings of movies, and most of the movies were condemned. And I remember asking my mother one time, what is the reason why all James Bond movies are condemned? And she told me because they can't stand you looking at a pretty girl in a bikini. That's why. That's why all these were condemned. Thankfully, that's not done anymore. And what they did, and this might offend some people out there, and if it does, it's okay. But it was the terrible sin of masturbation. Okay, I mean, that was the worst thing that could possibly happen. The nuns just constantly preached against that. And I think that turned a world of young children full of guilt and shame, particularly females, particularly males. Okay, their natural urges, when they overcome, they had to go to confession. You had to tell a priest who never had sex in his life, who never had all of these things, you had to confess your sins to him so this person could intervene to the Creator. Okay, and you'd get punishment in the form of penance. You have to do this, you have to do that. Now, I want to be transparent about this, that there are many things about the Catholic Church that I find acceptable and admirable and noble, particularly the last Pope, Pope Francis, whom I have tattooed across my chest, who am I to judge? And Pope Leo also, who seems to be a righteous man, and he said, if being anti-woke means sleeping through the suffering of others, call me woke. Okay? So please don't get me wrong. Now, I know what I'm talking about because at one time I was the president of a local parish council for 2 years. I taught CCD, so I know what I'm talking about. And I think I can share this, Mike, and you can see whether it's fit to come in the show or not. When I chose to step aside from the Catholic faith because of all the rules and the strictures, I remember that when my daughter was born, we were going to have her baptized. And I had to go to classes. We had to be instructed, of course, about all these things. And so I remember while I was listening to all this, and I raised my hand and I said, Sister, I said, please do not be offended by this. But what you're telling me is that my beautiful, innocent child, that if she does not receive this sacrament of baptism to wipe away this original sin from God knows how far long ago, then my innocent, beautiful daughter will not enter into paradise. And the nun said, yes, that's exactly correct. And I stood up and I said, again, please do not be offended, sister. That's just absolute nonsense. And I walked out. Of course, my wife was flabbergasted. They had her baptized anyway. But I guess that's sharing a little poignant reminder of my life too. Okay, so when we're taught these children from an early age, all that does is reinforce guilt and shame, and that's what this whole podcast is about. How guilt and shame is reinforced throughout people's lives. I've had women whom I counsel that have been in loveless, absolutely loveless no joy marriages, okay? That have been for years. And you know what they tell me, Mike? They say, I made a vow. I made a vow. And they say for better or for worse. All right. So here's what I have to say out there. Vows are made when you make a contract. Okay. When you make a contract, there's terms. Let me use this as an example. If I contract with Mike to sell me 100 watermelons a week for $1 a piece, as long as he delivers the watermelons and I pay the $1 a watermelon, then that contract is fulfilled. Is it not? Let's say that all of a sudden you started to give me 80 watermelons or 50, or some of them are late or some of them are rotten. And I start paying you rather than $1, I can only pay you 50 cents a watermelon this week. What is that called? It's called breach of contract, is it not? So here's what I tell people. The vows that you made when you entered into this contract no longer exists anymore. And if those vows and if those conditions no longer exist under which you made those vows, that contract is null and void. Okay? What's your thoughts on all this, Mike?
Yeah, no, I think this is ingrained. I think like anything, I think so many things, come from a good place and people warp it, right? You've talked about the things that were, actually said according to the scriptures versus how they were executed over years, and for this guilt and everything like that. And again, it's just fear, and it's making everybody even more miserable. And it's supposed to be something that gives them hope
and joy.
And joy, yes.
So we're talking about faith communities, religious structures of command and control. Oh, hi, Jim Ellermeyer back again from Fishing Without Bait. And as we offer and express transparency, this is a shameless plug for a book that we are selling. This is a 365-day calendar where we have a Zen type of picture to draw with a caption, and then we ask some thoughtful questions that people can answer, such as, what are your general thoughts about the quote? What is the morning thought in the morning? What is your evening thought? And what will you do tomorrow to spread kindness? Okay? And the beauty of this is that it's not numbered. You can pick any page out. It's not numbered. You can pick any day out and pick any quote out you want, or not. So what we're doing, we're asking people to use this as some type of a mindfulness activity to start their day. When we start our day, not trying to race through the day or with anxiety, but rather maybe some introspective self-talk, some internal validation. And what we're doing here is this. Also, what we'd like to do, we're going to be offering some Patreon material, maybe some behind the themes things, or some of the podcasts that we've done where we take a deeper dive. And we'd like to get your thoughts on that. What would you like to see? Are there any podcasts that we've done where you would like us to do a deeper dive? So you can please contact the show, and we'd be glad to explore that. And as always, we're looking for stories of recovery. Everybody's in recovery from something. We like to know how you got here from there. And please be good to yourself. And yes, this is a shameless plug. And we all know that the desire to belong and to be accepted by our fellows can often lead people to suppress or hide behaviors or thoughts that don't coincide with the right thinking. Okay? Fear of ostracism and exclusion is a powerful motivator. We talk about being shunned. We talk about being cast out of cults, okay, that you no longer exist, okay? So family transmission, guilt after guilt after guilt passed down through generations, okay? So this concept of moral purity, that you have to be as pure as a driven snow. Isn't it amazing that the only ones who are checked for this purity are women? Do men ever get these type of questions?
But also, who's making the rules?
Yeah.
Out of that.
Say more about
equation.
that, Mike.
Well, I mean, I think, when we talk about even just looking at rules in this country, it's still shocking to me that women couldn't even equally vote until, the 60s, was it?
1926.
26. I mean, it was still within the last 100 years, right?
Women couldn't have a credit card until 1972 in their own names.
Right. Like things like that, there's still things that they didn't have rights to for being women. Like that's still like absolutely shocking to me, right? And that is part of that, while they are, put in a position and have been for so long. So and again, it's a world that was run by men, structures that were built by men, and why is a woman not good enough to be a leader of some of these groups as well? A lot of that's changing here and there, in religious, sections, but still, I think that tells you a lot of what you need to know. Do you, as a, and you still hear this today. There are religious thought leaders that constantly say, women don't have the smarts, don't have this, don't have that, and I had somebody that we had a heated argument with, and told a woman that she's just a rib, and like how demeaning is that? That's because you're trying to put people in control.
And this was not Jesus's message. Jesus had many women disciples. Many, okay? So in order to remain control, we have religiously induced guilt, having people have a sense of unworthiness, self-acceptance, fearing that they're going to fall short of religious ideals, okay? And what does that do? It helps people develop a harsh inner critic, undermine confidence and self-esteem. Okay. So, Mike, what do you think that prolonged exposure to guilt and shame, how do you think that contributes to mental health?
I think it deteriorates it greatly. I mean, this is the kind of thing that does lead to, suicides and terrible reactions to this kind of thing. We talk about, one of the biggest issues with the LGBT community is being raised in these kinds of environments and basically told that they're less than and just living in sin by the way that they are.
That they're broken.
That they're absolutely broken, and then that in turn breaks them in a different way.
Yes. So it leads to anxiety, depression, obsessive compulsive behavior tendencies. When I help people deal with masturbation and pornography, Mike, they become obsessed with pornography, and it's always done alone because the guilt and shame overwhelm them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So feelings of guilt and shame also affect social and romantic relationships.
Yes.
People find it difficult to express emotions or set healthy boundaries. Women are not supposed to have healthy libidos.
Mm-mm.
They're not supposed to have healthy sexual appetites.
Nope.
In fact, in Africa and some of these countries, young girls are subject to clitorectomies
Mm-hmm.
in order to prevent them from the possibility of even feeling pleasure during sex.
Right.
Okay? And the only acceptable sex acts are for procreation.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that God created these things to be full of guilt. And do you think God created us to be full of guilt and shame?
No. Well, we don't know the reason, but it would be to live, I would hope.
So all this religious upbringing can lead to a lifetime reliance on external authorities for moral guidance.
Mm-hmm.
All right? So I want to tell everybody out there, I don't think Mike or I need a PhD in spirituality or religions or religious studies to interpret Jesus's message of love, compassion, and forgiveness. And for all those people out there who call themselves Christians, if your faith and if your lifestyle does not include love, compassion, and forgiveness, I suggest that you redefine yourself. So, for everybody who wants to push back, please do. Please use your own words, though. Please don't use the echo chamber. We'll answer all constructive, helpful criticism. However, we're not going to apologize for anything that we said today. And we say that without reservation. And at the end of every podcast, we give a free prescription: fruits, nuts, and vegetables. Unplug your television and take up fishing. And for a truly mindful experience, we suggest that you fish without bait. Do a kindness for yourself and do a kindness for another. Forgive yourself and forgive another. Till all are free, none are free. Namaste.
Please check out our website at fishingwithoutbait.com, where you can listen to the show, comment on our discussions, and find out where you can subscribe to our podcast.
If you're interested in flying the colors of Fishing Without Bait, click the shop icon on our website. We have clothing, mugs, cell phone cases, and so much more. Show the world that you fish without bait.
This show is a member of the Sorgatron Media Podcast Network. Find out more at sorgatronmedia.com.